Many people think that the steam engine was invented by James Watt, but that's not true. There are a lot of inventions with steam-powered machines, but until the 17th century they didn't have a practical use to it. In around 100 AD, the Aeolipile was described by Hero of Alexandria. He was mostly credited for the invention. The machine was a bowl that was turning with the power of steam. It didn't really have a practical use. After this, it still lasted a while until they found a real use for the steam power, because slaves and animals gave them enough power. In the 6th century, there was somebody called Mathesius. He said things about a machine that used steam. The first time that somebody tried to make use of a steam engine was in 1543, when Blasco de Garay tried to move the paddle wheel of a boat with something that you could call a steam engine. There is not much known about this machine, but only that it contained a barrel with boiled water. Giovanni Battista della Porta described in 1601 a machine that used steam to raise a column of water. He did this in the work called Spiritali. It used a vacuum created by the condensation of steam. The machine was called pneumatica. This machine also had no practical use. Edward Somerset was also mistakenly given a lot of credit. He told people about a machine that used fire to raise water, but he actually never made the machine. He did make a machine in 1663 that could raise water 12.2 meters high, but his design used a manual pump. Some people that actually did work on the progress of the steam machine were Jacob Besson, Agostini Ramelli, Leonardo da Vinci, Florence Rivaux, Salomon de Caux, Giovanni Branca, David Razai, Thomas Grant, and Edward Ford. They worked on it before James Watt was even born. Thomas Savery was the first person to produce a workable machine to raise water. It was able to pull water up about 8.5 meters using suction. It was able to do this due to atmospheric pressure and the condensation of steam within the closed barrel. Thomas Savery was the first person to see the link between steam power and atmospheric pressure. Without the atmospheric pressure, the power of steam maybe never became so strong. This design did have a practical use. They used it for draining mines. Thomas Newcomen came up with the idea of the fire engine. He wasn't accepted or recognized at first because he was from the lower class. He introduced the engine in 1712. It was basically a combination of the boiler in Savery's engine and a cylinder and a pump. It was used to raise water from mines. In 1765, James Watt was incorrectly called the inventor of the steam engine. In 1769, he had to repair a Newcomen engine. It was the best engine at the time. Watt added a separate condenser to it. This addition saved about 75% of the fuel that you had to use for the same amount of power in the Newcomen engine. Because of this improvement, the entire industry was changed. He didn't invent the steam engine, but he was given a lot of credit for it. Also at that time, he got most of the credits for his invention because all of the others were just ahead of their time. A steam engine uses energy which comes from the pressure steam builds up when it's getting hotter. One of the types of engines is the so-called atmospheric engine. How does the atmospheric engine work? First, the water gets heated by the fresh coals. When it's boiling, the valve between the cylinder and the boiler opens. The high-pressure steam enters the cylinder and pushes the piston. Because the piston goes up, the other side of the shown gear goes down. After this happened, the second valve between a water tank and the cylinder opens and sprays in some cold water, which cools down the water vapor inside the cylinder and pushes back the water in the boiler. When the first valve opens and the new vapor is pressed in on high pressure and pushes the cylinder back, and so on. The atmospheric steam engine was mostly used for pumping stuff. Another kind of steam engine is the steam engine used in, for example, trains. This is how it works. First, coal comes from the coal carriage and enters the locomotive and goes into the fire. This fire heats up the water in the boiler, which makes a high-pressure water vapor. This water vapor goes to the throttle valve. The throttle valve is used to control the speed of the locomotive. Then the water vapor goes into the inlet pipe. Through the inlet pipe it goes into the cylinder that drives the wheels. Because the water vapor has so much pressure that it was able to move trains which weighed about 150 tons per locomotive and 30 tons per empty wagon, this comes to a total of about 330 tons. A steamboat uses, just like a steam train, an external combustion engine. In the case of the boat, though, it doesn't power the wheels, because the boat doesn't have any wheels. It powers the water wheels, which makes the boat move. Steam engines are used in many different machines and changed the history in the Industrial Revolution. Steam engines are used in many machines, like for example trains, boats, tractors, in factories, and even in cars. This was though not a success because of the fact that they were way too heavy, and because of this they were very hard to handle and would crash very easily. Because of this, there have not been many of those steam cars. Some steam cars are the Toledo steam carriage. This was more a carriage than a car though, but since it has an engine, it's a car. And another example of a steam car is the Stanley steam car.